The evening sky over Colony 9 blazed with unusual colors as twin suns set behind the mountain range. Emma stood on her back porch, watching the spectacular display while eating the last of her ice cream. The colony had been her home for the past 5 years, ever since her mother decided they needed a quieter life away from the busy central worlds. At 16, Emma understood why they moved. Her father's work had made their family a target, even though she barely remembered him now. The last clear memory she had was of him teaching her how to throw a proper punch when she was 11. After that, he only existed in encrypted messages and rare gifts that appeared on her birthday. The warning sirens shattered the peaceful evening. Emma dropped her ice cream bowl as she saw 3 ships breaking through the atmosphere, their designs unlike anything in the colonial defense fleet. Their sharp predatory shapes reminded her of the hunting birds that nested in the colony's outskirts. "Emma, get inside now," her mother's voice carried from within their home. The fear in her mother's tone made Emma's blood run cold. In 5 years, she had never heard her mother sound scared. Emma ran inside, finding her mother already at the security panel, activating their home's defense systems. The thick metal shutters began sliding down over their windows, but they weren't fast enough. A bright purple beam cut through their living room, leaving a smoking hole in the wall. The panic room now. Her mother grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the hidden door behind their bookshelf. They had practiced this drill monthly, but it had always felt like her mother was being paranoid. Now Emma understood. They barely made it halfway across the room when the front door exploded inward. 3 figures stepped through the smoke. Tall, muscular aliens with scaled skin and elaborate battle armor. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural red light as they scanned the room. Emma's mother pushed her behind the couch and reached for the hidden compartment where she kept her personal defense weapon. But the aliens moved with frightening speed. One of them fired a strange device that wrapped her mother in glowing energy bands, immobilizing her instantly. "The offspring. That's our target," the leader spoke in heavily accented standard English. "Careful. No damage." Emma knew she should run, but years of her mother's training kicked in. She grabbed the fallen weapon and fired 2 shots at the nearest alien. The energy blasts bounced harmlessly off its personal shield, but the action seemed to amuse them. Definitely the right one. "Fighting spirit like the father," another alien commented, adjusting something on its wrist device. "Sleep now, little warrior." A sweet-smelling gas filled the room. Emma tried to hold her breath, but her vision began to blur. The last thing she saw was her mother struggling against her bonds, screaming words that Emma couldn't hear through the growing fog in her mind. When the Colonial Defense Forces finally arrived 10 minutes later, they found Emma's mother unconscious but alive. Emma was gone, along with any trace of the alien raiders. The only clue they left behind was a simple message projected onto the living room wall. "The ghost's legacy is now our leverage." The responding officers looked at each other with growing dread. Everyone in the galaxy knew who the ghost was, even if few had ever seen him. Marcus Stone had earned that nickname through decades of impossible missions and a body count that made hardened warriors wake up screaming. He was the boogeyman that criminal empires warned their children about, the shadow that made alien warlords check their security systems twice. And someone had just taken his daughter. In a quiet office on the Galactic Council's central station, a communication officer's hand shook as she prepared to send the alert that would reach Marcus Stone. She had seen the aftermath of his work once, years ago. As she pressed the transmit button, she whispered a prayer to whatever gods might be listening. The galaxy was about to remember why humans were the only species with specific laws forbidding the harming of their young. Marcus Stone sat in the meeting room aboard the Galactic Council's flagship, listening to trade negotiations between 3 alien species. His presence alone had kept the talks civil. No one wanted to risk angering the human who had single-handedly ended the pipeline wars. He wore a simple black suit, but the aliens at the table knew it probably contained enough hidden weapons to overthrow a small government. The message arrived silently on his personal device. The aliens noticed only the slightest change in his posture, a small tightening around his eyes, a barely perceptible pause in his breathing. But that tiny reaction made the room temperature seem to drop by several degrees. "Excuse me," Marcus said, his voice carrying the same gentle tone he used when speaking to scared children or cornered prey. "Something requires my immediate attention." The alien delegates watched him leave, and several let out breaths they hadn't realized they were holding. In the corridor, Marcus read the message again. His fingers didn't shake. His face showed no emotion. But the cleaning robot that passed him immediately reversed direction and fled down another hallway, its basic programming recognizing a threat it couldn't process. In his private quarters, Marcus activated his secure communications array. The holographic display showed his daughter's home, now partially destroyed. He watched the security footage in complete silence, memorizing every detail of the attackers, their movements, their equipment, the insignias on their armor. His computer chimed with an incoming transmission. The alien on the screen wore elaborate military decorations and an expression of barely contained terror. "Ghost, we have received demands from the kidnappers." The alien spoke quickly. "They want the release of political prisoners from the Outer Rim detention facilities. They've given us 48 hours to comply." Marcus smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Send me everything you have on the prisoners they want released. And I mean everything, even the files that don't officially exist." "Of course, but Ghost, the Council is willing to negotiate. We can handle this diplomatically." "No." The word carried the weight of countless unmarked graves. "You're going to do exactly what I tell you. First, lock down every detention facility in the Outer Rim. No one gets in or out without my direct authorization. Second, I want access to all surveillance data from the sector where the attack originated. Third, inform the Council that I am taking an indefinite leave of absence." The alien's throat sacs pulsed nervously. "The delegates are concerned about the stability of the peace talks without your presence. The delegates should be more concerned about what happens when someone takes a human child from their parent." Marcus began removing his suit jacket. Underneath, his arms bore scars from 100 battles. "You've all studied our history. You know about mother bears defending their cubs. You've read the reports about human parents lifting vehicles to save their offspring." He opened a hidden panel in the wall, revealing an arsenal that would make a military commander weep. "But you've never seen what happens when someone takes the daughter of a man who spent 30 years teaching the galaxy to fear him." The alien swallowed hard. "What should I tell the kidnappers when they call again?" Marcus selected a matte black combat suit from his closet. The material seemed to drink in the light around it. "Tell them I got their message. Tell them I'm coming. And tell them that every hour my daughter spends in their custody will cost them a year of suffering before I let them die." He ended the transmission and began his preparations. Each weapon he checked was a promise. Each piece of equipment he packed was a guarantee of violence to come. His movements were precise, unhurried, methodical, the actions of a man who had turned killing into an art form. In the space station's observation deck, an alien child asked its parent why all the stars seemed dimmer. The parent hurried them away, understanding on an instinctive level that the darkness spreading through the galaxy had nothing to do with celestial bodies and everything to do with the father's rage. The black market station, known as Haven, floated in the darkness between two systems, its existence officially denied by every government in the galaxy. Inside its crowded halls, creatures from 100 worlds traded in goods and information that could start or end wars. Today, those halls were unnaturally quiet. The ghost had come to Haven. Marcus walked through the market district, his combat suit making no sound. Merchants closed their shops as he passed. Some fled entirely, leaving valuable goods behind. They had all heard the stories. They all knew why he was here. In the deepest part of the station, Marcus entered a dimly lit bar. The only occupant was a blob-like creature with dozens of eyes, tentacles wrapped around a large data terminal. The creature's skin changed from green to pale yellow at Marcus's approach. "I wondered when you would come," the information broker burbled. "News travels fast. Especially news this. Interesting." Marcus placed a credit chip on the sticky bar surface. "Tell me about the raiders." "Ah, yes. The ones who took your offspring. Bold move. Very bold. Or very stupid." The creature's tentacles danced over the terminal. "They use advanced cloaking technology. Experimental. Stolen from military research facilities." Marcus added another chip to the bar. The broker's eyes dilated with pleasure. "Their leader is Captain Drell, ex-military. Discharged for excessive violence, if you can imagine such a thing. Has connections to the prison system in the Outer Rim. The kind of connections that let him know which prisoners are worth bargaining for." In the corners of the bar, hidden security cameras recorded everything. By tomorrow, the footage would spread through criminal networks like a virus. They would see how Marcus simply nodded at each piece of information, his stillness more terrifying than any threat of violence. "One more thing," the broker added, greed overwhelming its survival instinct. "They have a base in the Nexus sector. Very secret, very secure. The location would be expensive." Marcus placed a small black cube next to the credit chips. The broker's skin turned white with fear. "That's a quantum decoder. Military grade. Worth more than this entire station." Marcus's voice remained soft. "It's yours, along with your life, in exchange for everything you know." The information poured out like water through broken glass. When Marcus left Haven an hour later, 3 things happened. Every criminal organization in the sector began moving their operations as far from the Nexus sector as possible. The information broker started planning early retirement on a distant planet, and someone tried to warn Captain Drell. They found the warning messenger's ship floating in space 2 days later. Its hull was intact, its systems functional, its crew untouched but trembling in terror. None of them would say what happened, but they all quit their jobs and never worked in space again. On a luxury cruise ship 3 systems away, a well-dressed businessman disappeared from his private suite. The ship's security footage showed nothing, but everyone knew he had been Drell's financial backer. His accounts were drained an hour later, the money split between various children's charities. In a high-security compound on a mining colony, one of Drell's lieutenants woke to find his personal shield generators disabled and a note on his bedside table. He surrendered to colonial authorities immediately, begging for protective custody. The Galactic Council watched these events with growing concern. Some suggested trying to stop Marcus. The wiser ones remembered what happened to the last group that tried to stand between a human and their child. In her cell on Drell's hidden base, Emma heard the guards whispering about ships going dark, about allies disappearing, about the growing silence in the sectors around them. She smiled, remembering her mother's words. "Your father isn't just good at finding people. He's good at making them wish they'd never been found." The lights in the base flickered briefly, and Emma's smile grew wider. The hunt was coming to an end. Now the real nightmare would begin. Not for her, but for everyone who had thought taking the ghost's daughter was a good idea. The emergency meeting of the largest criminal syndicate in the galaxy took place in an underground bunker. 37 crime lords gathered around a holographic table, their species as diverse as their criminal enterprises. They had one thing in common: fear. "We need to find the girl before he finds us," a reptilian boss hissed. "My operations in 3 sectors have gone dark. No bodies, no evidence, just silence." The hologram showed a map of recent incidents: ships vanishing, bases going quiet, key personnel disappearing without a trace. Each event formed part of a pattern that was closing in on the Nexus sector like a noose. "I lost contact with my best smuggling crew," another crime lord growled. "They were supposed to move weapons through the Nexus sector. The only message we got was, 'The ghost sends his regards.'" In her cell, Emma studied the guard rotation patterns. Her father had taught her that information was the deadliest weapon. and she had been gathering it since her arrival. The guards thought the cameras in her cell were working. They weren't. She had disabled them on her third day using a trick she remembered from one of her father's rare lessons. The guard bringing her meal was nervous. Emma noticed how his hands shook slightly when he opened the cell's food slot. She had spent days building a reputation as a quiet, cooperative prisoner. It was another lesson from her father. Let them think you're harmless. It's easier to strike when they lower their guard. Back in the criminal syndicate's bunker, a holographic message appeared above their table. The crime lords fell silent as they read it. Help me find my daughter, and your operations will be spared. Resist, and you'll learn why they call me the Ghost. We have no choice, the reptilian boss said. My sources say he once wiped out an entire pirate fleet because they threatened a colony with children on it. What do you think he'll do to us if we don't help find his own child? In Drell's base, Emma waited until the nervous guard was alone on his shift. When he opened the food slot, she spoke softly, kindly, like she was trying to comfort him. They haven't told you who I am, have they? The guard hesitated. It was enough. Emma continued, her voice carrying just a hint of pity. When my father comes, and he will come, the only ones who might survive are those who helped me. Think about that during your next shift change. The guard's skin turned a pale shade of gray. He had heard rumors about disappearing ships and silent bases, about a shadow that moved through the galaxy, leaving terror in its wake. Now he understood why his superior officers seemed increasingly anxious. On a distant space station, a data analyst noticed a pattern in ship movements. Entire sectors were being evacuated by criminal organizations, all moving away from a specific point in space. She showed her findings to her superior, who immediately classified the information and sent it to the Galactic Council with a priority tag. The council members watched the data with growing unease. One of them, older and wiser than the rest, shared a story from his youth. He had once seen the Ghost in action during the colony wars. He moved like water through shadow, the counselor remembered. When he was done, the enemy commander begged for death. The Ghost replied that death was a mercy he hadn't earned yet. Emma smiled in her cell as she heard more guards whispering in the corridors. Their fear was a tangible thing now, growing with each passing hour. She had counted 4 guards abandoning their posts in the last day alone. She thought about the nervous guard, about the seed of doubt she had planted in his mind. Her father had taught her that fear was contagious, that terror could spread through an organization like a virus, destroying it from within. As she heard the distant sound of another ship departing the base in a hurry, Emma knew she was her father's daughter in more ways than one. The Ghost's hunt was forcing the galaxy's underworld to choose sides. Those who helped him might survive. Those who stood in his way would learn why humans were the only species in known space with legends about vengeful parents who could tear reality apart to save their children. Deep in the Nexus Sector's asteroid belt, Drell paced in his command center. The base's defenses were top of the line. Automated turrets, energy shields, sensor arrays that could detect a dust particle at half a light year. None of it helped him sleep at night anymore. Another ship requesting permission to leave. Sir, his second-in-command reported. Third one today. Drell slammed his fist on the command console. Cowards. This base is impregnable. Let them run. We still have the girl, and that means we have leverage. The security feeds showed Emma in her cell, sitting quietly on her bed. She looked peaceful, almost bored. It made Drell nervous. Prisoners didn't look peaceful after 2 weeks in captivity. They certainly didn't smile at the guards like they knew something no one else did. In the cell, Emma finished her mental countdown of the guard patrol timing. She had spent days watching them, learning their patterns, finding the gaps. The nervous guard from before was on duty again. He avoided looking at her directly now. The outer sensor grid is picking up some strange readings, a technician announced. Like something's causing interference in Sector 7. Drell clicked his mandibles in irritation. The asteroid belt is full of magnetic anomalies. Run a diagnostic and. The lights flickered. Just for a second, barely noticeable, but it was enough to make every alien in the command center freeze. On his ship, hidden in the shadow of a massive asteroid, Marcus reviewed the base's schematics one final time. The data had cost 3 favors and 1 very expensive bottle of Earth whiskey, but it was worth it. Every security system, every emergency protocol, every escape route. He knew them all now. His ship's computer chimed softly. The virus he had planted in their systems through the Nervous Guard's personal device was working perfectly. Small errors at first, things they would dismiss as equipment malfunctions. By the time they realized what was happening, it would be too late. Emma felt the subtle vibration in the cell's wall, a change in the base's power distribution that the guards wouldn't notice. Her father was coming. She reached under her thin mattress and pulled out the small piece of metal she had worked loose from her bed frame. Not much of a weapon, but she only needed it for one specific task. In the command center, Drell received a transmission. The hologram showed a simple text message: "Last chance. Release her and you die quickly." Drell laughed, but there was an edge of hysteria in it. "Send our reply. Tell this ghost that if he comes within range of our sensors, his daughter dies first." The communications officer typed the message with trembling fingers. The response came back instantly. "I'm already here." Every screen in the command center went dark. When they came back on, they all showed the same image, a simple countdown timer ticking down from 10 minutes. "Full lockdown," Drell screamed. "Everyone to battle stations. I want every weapon online, every shield at maximum power." In her cell, Emma heard the alarm klaxons. The Nervous Guard rushed past, not even looking in her direction. She waited until his footsteps faded, then moved to the cell door. The piece of metal she had worked loose fit perfectly into the lock mechanism, just like her father had taught her years ago. The base's lights flickered again, longer this time. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red light. In the command center, Drell watched his security feeds go dark one by one. The sensor arrays reported nothing unusual, but everyone could feel it. Death was coming. "Sir," his second-in-command's voice shook. "We're getting reports of something moving in the lower levels. Security teams aren't responding." Drell stared at the countdown timer, his mandibles clicking rapidly with fear. Now he understood what the other crime lords had meant. This wasn't a rescue mission. This wasn't a negotiation. This was a human father coming for his child, and he had just realized how badly he had underestimated what that meant. The base's lower level went dark first. Emergency lights cast red shadows as security teams moved through the corridors, weapons ready. They found nothing. No intruder, no signs of forced entry. Just empty hallways and the growing sound of their own nervous breathing. Then the screaming started. "Team 3, report." Drell shouted into his comm unit. Static answered him. "Team 3, someone tell me what's happening down there." A single response came through, broken by interference. He's not using doors. How is he moving through the silence?" In the ventilation system above Cargo Bay 2, Marcus moved like liquid shadow. His combat suit's stealth field bent light around him. But he barely needed it. These aliens, for all their advanced technology, never thought to guard their maintenance passages. They never looked up. Another security team disappeared from the monitors. No weapons fire, no signs of struggle. They simply stopped responding. Drell's mandibles clicked rapidly as he watched his forces vanish one by one. "Lock down everything," he ordered. "Seal all bulkheads. No one moves between sections without my direct order." The massive security doors slammed shut throughout the base. In her cell, Emma heard them and smiled. The base's power grid was straining now, trying to maintain all systems at maximum. She counted down in her head. 3, 2, 1. The lights went out completely. When they came back on 5 seconds later, her cell door was open. Emma moved silently into the corridor. the makeshift lockpick still in her hand. Her father had taught her that timing was everything. When everyone was looking for a threat from outside, they forgot to watch the threats inside. 2 levels up, Marcus emerged from a maintenance hatch into a guard post. 3 aliens turned, reaching for weapons. He was faster. The first one fell before it could scream. The second as it tried to radio for help. The third raised its hands in surrender. "The girl," Marcus said softly. "Where?" "Detention level." The guard's translator crackled with fear. "But he'll never reach her." "The bulkheads." Marcus was gone before the guard finished speaking. They found him later, unharmed but unable to stop shaking. In the command center, Drell watched his security systems fail one after another. Cameras showed glimpses of movement that shouldn't be possible, a shadow passing through solid walls, guards falling to an unseen attacker, locked doors opening for no reason. "Sir," his second-in-command pointed at a screen. "The prisoner. She's gone." Emma moved through the base like her father had taught her, staying close to the walls, using the emergency lights to hide her shadow, timing her movements between camera suites. She heard fighting ahead and changed direction. Her father had also taught her to avoid running toward gunfire. Marcus reached the detention level and found empty cells. Pride mixed with concern. Emma had escaped on her own, but now she was somewhere in the chaos. He checked his wrist display, watching the dots representing security teams vanish from the base's internal sensors. A squad of guards rounded the corner ahead, nearly 20 strong. They opened fire immediately, energy bolts filling the corridor. Marcus stepped into their barrage and wasn't there. The guards stopped firing, confused. Then they started falling, one by one, as death moved among them. "Find her." Drell screamed into the base-wide comm. "Find the girl, or we're all dead." Emma heard the announcement and ducked into a side room as more guards ran past. The room was some kind of armory. She selected a stunner from the weapon rack. Non-lethal, but effective. Just because she was her father's daughter didn't mean she had to be lethal. The base shook as something exploded in the lower levels. Emergency sirens wailed as fire suppression systems activated. Through it all, Emma heard something else. The steady, rhythmic sound of security doors being breached, getting closer and closer to the command center. Drell's remaining officers watched their leader with growing panic. They had all heard stories about the ghost, but stories hadn't prepared them for this. This wasn't combat. This was a force of nature disguised as a man, and they had made the mistake of taking his child. The command center's main door exploded inward, filling the room with smoke and debris. Drell's remaining guards opened fire at the entrance, their energy weapons lighting up the smoke cloud. They hit nothing but air. Through a maintenance duct on the opposite side of the room, Emma watched the chaos unfold. Her father had taught her that the obvious entrance was usually a distraction. She counted under her breath, waiting for the perfect moment. The guards never saw Marcus coming. He emerged from the shadows behind them, moving like a dancer through their ranks. Each movement was precise, elegant, lethal. Guards fell without understanding what hit them, their weapons clattering uselessly to the floor. Drell backed away from his command console, mandibles clicking in terror. "Stay back. I'll tell you everything. The prison break plan, our contacts, everything." "Too late," Marcus said softly, advancing on the alien captain. "You took my daughter." A side door hissed open. Emma stepped through, stunning the last guard who was trying to sneak up on her father. "Actually," she said, "I took myself back. He's just here for the cleanup." Marcus turned, and for a moment, his deadly calm facade cracked. Relief and pride fought for control of his expression. "You escaped on your own. You taught me well." Emma kept her stunner trained on Drell. "Though your timing could have been better." I was about to walk out the front door. A laugh escaped Marcus, a sound that made Drell's security chief faint dead away. "Your mother always said you got my sense of timing." He turned back to Drell, his voice hardening. Now, about the consequences of your choices. Wait, Emma said. She walked up to Drell, who seemed unable to decide which human to fear more. You wanted to use me as leverage. You thought taking me would give you power over him. She smiled, and it was her father's smile. That was your first mistake. Your second was not realizing that I'm not just his daughter. I'm my father's student. She fired her stunner. Drell collapsed, unconscious but alive. Stunner? Marcus asked, raising an eyebrow. Less paperwork, Emma shrugged. Besides, he'll face justice. That's worse than anything you could do to him. Now he has to live with the knowledge that he was outsmarted by a teenager. The cleanup took hours. Galactic Council peacekeepers arrived to find the base's surviving crew waiting in the hangar, many of them still shaking. They found Drell and his officers locked in their own cells, with detailed files about their operations uploaded to the base's public servers. As they left the asteroid belt in Marcus's ship, Emma watched the base grow smaller through the viewport. Mom's going to be worried. She knows you're safe. I called her first. Marcus hesitated, then added, I'm sorry I wasn't around more. You were keeping us safe by staying away. Emma turned from the viewport. But maybe now we can work on finding a middle ground. I clearly need to polish my escape skills. Another laugh, warmer this time. Your mother will kill me if I turn this into a training opportunity. Then we just won't tell her. Emma grinned. Besides, the galaxy should know that the Ghost's legacy isn't just about fear. It's about protecting people. It's about family. News of the incident spread quickly through the galaxy's underworld. The story grew with each telling. How the Ghost had torn through an impregnable base like smoke through air. How his daughter had proven to be just as formidable. Criminal organizations added a new rule to their operations. Never, under any circumstances, target humans with children. In the Galactic Council chambers, the Security Committee updated their threat assessment protocols. Under known human combat triggers, they added a new top-level warning. Parental protection response. Avoid activating at all costs. And in a quiet home on Colony 9, a family began the careful work of building something new. A balance between duty and love, between protection and presence, between the shadow that kept the galaxy in check and the father who had missed too many birthdays. Some said the Ghost grew softer after that. Those who knew better understood the truth. He had simply found something worth stepping out of the shadows for.